So you've got the vision, but how do you pay for it? I hear that question so many different times, and now we're going to address it. This is part 4 of our 9-part series on starting a transitional housing facility. And today we're going to specifically look at how you can fund it and how you can do it in a way that is not going to break the bank. So let's dive right in. I can say honestly, when you get into the space, you need to first of all understand what it takes to start up. Okay. And my model was different than most because we were able to do this a few years ago and get into getting the property. But that's the biggest thing. After you've sort of gone through some things, and we're not jumping out here talking about go getting the property tomorrow, okay? You got to do this part of the process, understanding everything's cost that it costs to do this work, right? So if you are in the financial ability to purchase, then I would start at purchasing. But I also know people who lease properties and do this model. Now, have I done that? Yes, I have. Did I like it? No, I did not. Because at the end of the day, I preferred buying, but we built ours off of doing the tax sales. So tax sales I love because you can get properties at a low enough price point if you've got some capital to be able to do that. But I know a lot of people don't have capital. They literally just want to get in and start. So you get in where you fit in. So if leasing a property is what works for you, then I say do that. Who am I to say you can't do it, right? But I want to see you do something that is going to serve you. So as you think about getting that piece down, you now need to list everything that's going to take to get that property. Like, I would encourage you not to get something that's going to require a whole lot of renovations. And depending on the population that you're wanting to serve, that can be costly. Like if you're working with assisted living or you want to do something working with seniors and you got to think about, ADA requirements and all those other things, then yeah, that's going to get costly. But path of least resistance, go with something that, and better if you can get something that somebody wants really to get off their hands and you're helping them. It looks like you're helping, but you are, but you're not going to pay a lot of rent to be able to have that house and run your programming in it. So I just want you to be aware of what type, like where you're going to find yourself first. Are you going to purchase? Are you going to rent? Or are you going to use the property you got right now? But like I would lean toward the lowest piece first and then work my way forward. And then based off of that, then you can understand the other costs that are going to be associated with having this transitional housing facility, because you'll have to think about insurance. You got to think about staffing, if you're going to have staffing, to the extent of if it's 24/7 staffing or not. And it's all based on what the requirements are in your state. So make sure you're doing your research so you know what's required depending on which type of niche you're serving. So as you start determining what those costs are, then you just start laying it down and saying, okay, this is what's going to cost for the electricity. I'm going to have security. I'm going to have internet. I'm going to have gas. I'm going to have the phone. Like, you need to lay out all the costs related to your programming and what you really need. And I use that word need instead of what you want, because sometimes you can't always get what you want right now. Get what you need to just simply launch the program. So once you know what all those needs are and the costs associated with it, now you know where you sort of need to be, especially in determining then how much each person's going to come in, like how many people you can have. Like, you can start lining it up and seeing what options are available. Now, we had talked about leasing, right? One thing you might want to consider, especially if it's a property that you might want to potentially own, you can do a lease to own or a lease option property. You don't have to necessarily rent only, and it's nice to have something that you will eventually own, that the property that the program that you create will then pay for. That's what's ideal, I believe, if you can't acquire a property um, as easily as we did through a tax sale, or doing a purchase, which can get costly depending on where you live. So, St. Louis market, we have properties that we sell a whole lot of properties under 100,000. Like that's still a real thing. Where if you were doing this in California or somewhere else, you're not buying a house that low, and you have to think about what that overhead is going to cost you. So, I would just encourage you to figure out how you can get into a property and what the costs look like to be able to get it. And that's going to take some time. But once you know what that is, then you have to think about, okay, now that I've got this is how much it's going to cost. How much, where can I find the sources to pay for it? Okay. So that's where you then can rely on. They do have some government grants out there, through the local COC, through HUD. There's other ways, but I'm just going to be honest with you. I did not get any of my funding. I'm just making sure in my head if I got any funding for these nope, other than working with agencies that get it. So maybe indirectly gotten it. We'll go through agencies, but we've not directly gotten any government funding directly for what we do. We've always either got it from an agency that got the funding, and we were like, sometimes as a subcontractor, you could do like a memorandum of understanding with an agency to get the funding that they have allocated. That is probably the best way I would say that you would be able to get that, unless you're really seasoned and you get really good to where you're grant worthy. And that usually comes with time. Like they don't give grants to just anybody. You opened up, last month and next month you're filling out a grant application. It doesn't work out like that. So I just want to encourage you, don't eliminate it. Just figure out how you can take advantage of government contracts government grants without being the actual holder of that grant. Perfect example, we work with multiple agencies in the city of St. Louis, and through working with them, we are able to prop up a property that's dedicated solely to them. That could be a beautiful model, especially if they line up with what you're already doing and they've got the reputation. They're the ones who are building relationships with those government grants so that they can continue to get that. But I want to tell you, if you're doing that, make sure that you know when those contracts end. Because if let's say a contract ends and they either don't renew or they lose that contract, guess what happens to you? You're now impacted. So there are always ways in which you need to always be aware, even though grants are wonderful, they sometimes go away. And that's why for the duration of us doing this, we've never relied on government grants for any type of program that we've created. It's all been from, we build it ourselves. We create it ourselves and make sure that the individuals who come have ways in which they can make sure that they are able to pay their dues. So those things happen. Now, also a thing you'll need to consider is, depending on how you're structured, you can get private donors all day long and investors who want to work with you. We've worked with multiple people who actually are in this space, and clearly they want to just give. They see the work that you're doing, they see your heart. And you could be a social enterprise, which is a for-profit that serves a mission or a purpose. That's a social enterprise. You're still a for-profit, but you operate and do charitable things in what you do. So those can come privately. You've got people that will give on a regular basis. If, especially when your heart is in the right place, they see what it is that you want to do. They want to help you do that. And there's nothing against taking that in. Now, when they ask if you have a letter you can give, you can't give the same letter that a nonprofit can give, but you can partner with somebody who has a letter that they can give. So there's so many different ways that you can look at this to make sure you can get funding. This is where you just having to simply be creative. And a creative mind, you can do a lot of things, especially with getting the funding that you need. And I like layering my funding. So where we have individuals who, will do their own thing. You've got agencies that then support them, and then you have other contracts that you can get. all for the same work. Now you've layered for every person participating in your program, and now you can substantially bring in more into your program because you're serving a bigger purpose. And now, unless there's a stipulation that says you cannot do that with a contract, then you can do that. So those are the type of things you want to look at. And I want to encourage you, if you do get a contract, make sure you're looking at what the stipulations are and understanding what it is, because you don't want to get in trouble when it comes to your contracts and what you sign up for, but you clearly can do that unless someone tells you that you can't. So I would encourage you to make sure you understand and get you someone who can look at that for you. I'd be glad to give you some connections on that to help guide you down that direction if that is something that you're looking forward to. Now, as I suggested earlier, you can be creative. I want to encourage you to be creative with how you can bring in funds. Because as you heard me say, we layer a lot of ours and we partner. So whether we're partnering with agencies that are bringing their clients to us, and then we've got ways in which we are building training on top of that that then pays for that. Like, there's several ways that you can be creative. But I've heard people who go to GoFundMe and do things. You never know what people are willing to do. I've never utilized GoFundMe, but GoFundMe would be a great way that you can do that. And I believe you can do that nonprofit or for profit. I'm not sure, don't quote me on it, but I would say whichever means that allow you as a nonprofit or for profit to bring in funds, do that. There's a lot of ways in which you could do that. And then I've heard people simply who do local fundraising events so that you are meeting a need and partnering with people who also do that work. Kill two birds with one stone. Why try to do it by yourself? It's in those partnerships that in those collaborations that you can really expand and grow your vision of what you want to do, especially if it's different than what anyone else is offering. That's what you want to do, is set yourself apart from what anyone else is doing, and then they're going to flood. You build it and they will come. And that's what I love about the funding piece. Now, as you look at the last piece, and this here is how you can make sure that you can be sustainable long term. I want to talk through that, but before I do, if you've not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and do so. I want to make sure you're getting these notifications when new videos come out, and I want to hear from you. So also give me some comments below, because I would love to make sure I'm serving what you want to hear coming from me as it relates to transitional housing. So in this last piece, as we talk about long-term financial sustainability, we're really talking about your housing model simply becoming a business model. So as you get into this space, and you've heard me say, there are multiple streams that you can build in to this program when you do it smartly. And by doing it smart and layering it, you're creating a business model that will ultimately serve you over time. So think about it. You actually having a program that is serving individuals just on a basic level. Then after you get it solid, you build that model out, you got documentation to support it. Now you can go to the next phase of, now what are some other things that I can qualify for? What are some other things that I can get? What are some subsidies that they could be able to get? Because depending on the population that you're serving, there could be more money out there that you don't even know exists, that you can then build on that model and then really grow a business that's going to be there for you long term. And as you've heard me probably say before, if you're structured right, this is where the power is really going to come. Because when your structure is structured right, you're going to have long-term financial sustainability because you're structured right. You've structured your business, and you structured your properties all under the right trust. So as you do that and you're moving through that space, you now have created something that will last long term. And that's your goal. You don't want to build something that can crumble within a year, 2, 3 years, or something that won't sustain past 1 or 2 generations. You want to build something that will last over time. And the way in which you do that is starting with this first step and then start building on it and building on it and building on it. Next thing you know, you have a business model that has multiple streams of income coming in, and now your facility has moved from one to a multi-million-dollar operation that has funding that can serve you long term. And that's where I want to see all of you at, is building something that will ultimately stay with you long term so that you can grow not only in the transitional housing program that you're creating, but ultimately into something that could pass on and give you the freedom that you want to have for you and your family. So I hope you enjoyed this part of our 9-part series on starting a transitional housing facility, and I will see you at the next one. So get out there and transform your life, because as you transform your life, you will be transforming the world.